Hi, I'm Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and welcome to Impact. Each week we bring you information about exciting things that are happening right here in this community, and today will be no different. For those that know me, you know that I love students and I love talking about students. It's a little bit about my educational background, but it's also a part of being a lifelong learner. And our guest today is going to talk about learning that takes place outside of the classroom that students can have for a lifetime. My guest is Dr. Rachel Dunbar. She's a Child Development Instructor at Calhoun Community College. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
And to introduce you as a Child Development Instructor, most people might think that that's the pathway that we're going to go down and talk about the developmental stages of children and a lot of other kinds of things of that nature. But as an educator, you also have a very strong passion for students pushing their learning outside of the classroom and not just doing it in the community, but going out of the country.
Right.
So we're going to talk about the benefits of student travel.
I'm excited about it.
Well, tell me how this became a passion for yourself, because I know you have a little bit of a personal backstory.
I do. So I began school at an undergraduate level at Oxford College of Emory University in Georgia. And I was with a professor who did a lot of traveling, but at the time when I was taking her, I had not been outside of the country, and this was something that was very new to me. And she often talked about her travels and the different things that she had seen abroad. So when I transferred to another university, I was actually able to be a transient student. And during that time, I had an opportunity to go to Geelong, Australia for an entire semester where I lived with a family. I had a mom, a dad, two brothers, and I was immersed in their culture, and I was able to be there to do my student teaching.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure a lot of people have that first experience and that first opportunity. And part of that has to do with more than just the enthusiasm and excitement of traveling, but also maybe even pushing back on some of the fear, some of the apprehension. What kind of things were going on with you emotionally as you thought about making this venture?
I come from a family of my mom, my dad, and then it's just me and my sister. So we're a very close-knit family. But I did have the fear of what's going to happen when I'm not with my family. And that's one of the fears that a lot of students have. One of three fears. They're afraid to be away from their families. They are unsure of the cost factor of what is going to be, what expenses will they occur. And then they're afraid of the unknown. All of that comes together with the thought process that traveling is for the majority culture as opposed to the minority culture. So although I want all students to take the opportunity to travel, I'm very passionate about my students of color.
Yeah, and I mean, you make an outstanding point because sometimes, because of lots of things, economic barriers and exposure and being connected to a network, those opportunities don't necessarily avail themselves. I did admit to you just in a recent conversation that I did not take advantage of those opportunities in college. One of the few regrets I have about my college and academic experience as an undergraduate, because those opportunities were swirling all around me. They were either as student missionaries, they were as English as a second language. I mean, just all these different opportunities to do international travel, and I just never embraced that. Of course, I see it a lot different today, and I understand that there are tremendous benefits from being able to do that. Talk about it from the perspective of an educator as you provide this kind of an opportunity for students to travel abroad.
A person does not have to necessarily be an education major. So although my content area is elementary, early childhood education, I look for students from all majors to travel. We have students who are business majors or education majors or even social work majors who look at what are the benefits that they can go abroad and then come back and use within their own content area and even going into the workforce. And we've talked about that, having a diverse workforce. So it makes students more marketable when they go into the workforce. It broadens their horizons and gives them what I call a deeper global perspective. Because if we consider the things that are broadcast on television, on social media, it's very, very limited. And so our perspective is boxed in based upon what we see, but not what we've actually experienced. So it even gives them an opportunity to speak with authority on other issues. And they can come back and say to someone, well, I've heard that you've commented on this, but let me tell you about it firsthand.
So what I'm hearing you say, and this is where I get really excited, I'm trying to hold myself down, is that the critical thinking component
It
is a huge outcome of this kind of experience. It's not just a matter of being around things and seeing things and writing them off as
Right.
that's just the way it is. But it really forces people to think about what they're seeing, who they're talking to, what's being said about certain groups
That's
of
right.
people and certain experiences, and really challenges them to really dig a lot deeper.
Consider what is sensationalized in media. If we have one channel that is talking about something in particular, but they're not doing something such as what you're doing on impact and saying, look at all of these different things that you can do, there is one avenue that the perspective is coming from, then that tends to be what we conceptualize and what we tend to believe. But if we step outside of that, get off of the continent and go to another country and say, I've been somewhere where I've seen this, but now I experience it differently, then it not only changes our perspective, but as I said before, it gives us a position of authority to say, I know this firsthand. And I think even in the tumultuous times that we have been in, where so many cultures are being stereotyped, negative stereotypes, this will help to dispel some of the myths.
Absolutely. And of course, you've done your share of traveling, and we didn't want you to come empty-handed today. We wanted to take full advantage of any visual artifacts that you may have. So tell us a little something about what you brought with us today.
So to the back of us, what I have are two framed pieces of art that are on rice paper. And I had them framed because the rice paper is so thin and fragile. And when I taught in Hubei province, China, I had middle school and high school students. And one of my students, Jerry, actually did an ink drawing for me. And I was able to bring this back and say, okay, this is one of the memories that I have of the students in the classroom. So this was my going away gift from him. You can't really see it that well, but he wrote a goodbye message to me on that one in particular. And I have traveled to Dubai. And Dubai was a great experience. I was actually able to do a conference presentation there and able to bring back pashminas. So these are things that I like to actually give away as gifts because they become conversation pieces. So if there is a young lady who wears it and says, oh, someone gives her a compliment, it's so beautiful, where did you get that? Well, my professor brought that back to me from Dubai. These I am particularly excited about because these are from Ghana, West Africa. And I was able to get both the picture and the staff through actually a barter and trading system. And part of the reason why that's important is because although there are some touristy places in Ghana, as there are everywhere, Ghana has areas that are very impoverished. And the individuals there were ready to barter and trade anything that we had. They wanted notebooks, pens, pencils. I think some of us took off our shoes and gave them our shoes. There wasn't an exchange of money, there was an exchange of goods. And the level of appreciation that came from those that which we bartered and traded with was amazing because it puts things in perspective about the level of privilege that we have. The notebooks, pens, and pencils, I think was something that had a major impact on me as an educator, because I think we take that for granted. We'll scribble on a piece of paper and then and throw it away. Whereas we have individuals in other countries who value this and take pride in the things that they've been given. So these are actually pieces of art that I have up at home, but I wanted to bring them in to share it with you
We
today.
appreciate you sharing that with us
Absolutely.
and our listening audience. And as I'm thinking about what you're saying, I'm also thinking about the idea that once these young people, once these older people perhaps as students, because I'm sure they're non-traditional students in this
Yes.
process as well, are exposed to these kinds of things, then you mentioned the word privilege. They get a chance to see life in a different context, the life that they live versus the life that other people live. And I'm sure that there's so many learning lessons in that process that they take away from that?
There are. I shared with you at one point that I have several students and mentees who are studying abroad now. They're in Dunbar, Saudi Arabia. And these are young ladies who were actually in the States and doing fairly well, even if they thought they had their own issues. But now that they are abroad and they're able to pour into others who may not necessarily have as much, it's not that Dunbar is an impoverished area, but they've been able to travel to other areas. They've been able to go to other countries and see what things are like in these other areas and come back and say, look how blessed we are. And what can I do when I get back to the United States to do something locally? Even if it's, I mention the Boys and Girls Club all the time. We have children in public housing. And what can I do in my local area to give back based upon the experience that I've had outside of the country?
Yeah, and I love the localization of that whole experience, because people do have the chance to travel, come back home, and then kind of reassess things, you know. How am I living my life? What is it that I have been granted with? What
Am I being wasteful?
What am I wasting?
That's right.
What I need to be a better steward of, you know, and that type of thing. And how can I be a better asset to the quality of life in my own community? And of course, these are some of the things that bubble up when students travel. I'm curious about the cost of student travel, because I'm sure there are lots of things that happen in that process. Of course, you know, the whole spectrum. Some people pay for it and other people find ways to pay for it. So somebody that's listening today and saying, you know, I have been kind of thinking about that, but I'm one of those that I'm kind of concerned about the cost. What do you say to them?
I say that the cost, depending on where you go and what your interests are, it can be a bit absorbent. I want people to start with the passport. So I've shared before that my hashtag is get a passport and go. I want people to apply for passports, and it can be anywhere from $55 for just a passport book to $165 if you get the passport book and the passport card. You will need to have your picture taken. You go to the post office and get it done. You have to have an original birth certificate as well as your driver's license. You send all of that in and they will send it back to you. So I would say it started at about $165. There's the airline cost. So airfare can be very expensive. But after we've got the airfare out of the way, it is, where am I going to stay? Is it a safe environment? Will I backpack and go up and down the continent and stay in hostels? Or will I work with a travel agent and stay in a reputable area or possibly a hotel? So yes, there are expenses such as the passport, the transportation, and a place to stay once you get there. But there are scholarships. There are hundreds of scholarships available. And sometimes the money goes unused because people don't know to apply for it. And there are people who also want to sponsor. Not just our students, but adults such as ourselves. We can go on a trip and it can be completely funded. I was able to get a scholarship when I was an undergraduate. I just applied for it and I got a sizable scholarship to help me apply. When I went to, I did a science program overseas. That was completely funded. The only thing I had to pay for was my visa. So I would tell people they've got to do their research on what free funds are available.
Yeah, they can always hook up with you too and get your guidance and direction and support. And tell us how people would do that actually.
People can get in touch with me via email at rachel.dunbar@calhoun.edu. I would love to speak with people via email. And if they'd like to come to Calhoun to meet with me, I would love to meet with people in person and speak with them on the benefits of traveling and how to dispel the myths and get over their fears.
Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, you know what I say about my fantasy of being the education superintendent of the universe, that no student will be able to leave school without having had the opportunity to travel. Just as important as earning those credits, those extracurricular activities, those leadership opportunities, I think should come travel.
Absolutely.
Get out of your world. We got 30 seconds, but a baby step, first step trip. Canada, Mexico?
Well, you have to consider that Canada's still in North America.
North America, sure.
I would say that first go to an English-speaking country.
Okay.
So Europe tends to be a safe bet. And although Australia is very far, I would say go to Australia. That was the first place that I went.
Okay.
So try an English-speaking country
Okay.
first.
All right,
Yes.
good. And also consider those costs, but
Consider
you're
the
available
cost.
to talk to them about those things.
And I would say everyone needs to go to the motherland at some point. If you
Yes.
can go to Africa, that is a must-have trip.
I haven't been, but I'm going.
Okay.
And that's on my to-do list. It's not even my bucket list, it's my to-do list. I think about bucket lists as, this pile of things I got to do before I die. But no, this is an absolute must and as important as anything
Yes.
else.
I have 2 more continents to go to. I haven't been to South America and I haven't been to Antarctica.
Are you
But
going to do Antarctica?
I might. I'm considering what kind of bubble jacket I might need. But those are the last 2 continents on my list.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, wonderful. Dr.
Thank
Rachel
you.
Dunbar, she's a child development instructor and an extraordinarily passionate person as it relates to student travel. Thank you for coming and sharing this information with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We hope that you've enjoyed our conversation. I know I have. I'm ready to travel. I've got my passport. In fact, I meant to have it here today and just completely forgot it. But get a passport. I think that's the best place to start. And even investigating what that process is all about is a good first step. Start having those kinds of conversations among yourselves. When you start talking about sharing all those other things that you share on social media, share, hey, you, let's go travel somewhere. Let's do something together. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of the broadcast that you've just seen, which you can also see on our Facebook page, which is Impact with Kenny Anderson. And you can also see some behind the scenes shots of what happens once the camera stops rolling. For Impact, I'm Kenny Anderson. I hope that you have a great day.